After 5 decades of living, I've learned something crucial that nobody talks about. There are 9 things you should never reveal to anyone, no matter how close they seem. Between the ages of 50 and 75, life transforms in ways most people don't anticipate. The rhythm changes, priorities shift, and perhaps most importantly, you begin to understand that silence often carries more wisdom than speech. We've accumulated decades of experience navigating complex relationships, weathering life's storms, and learning difficult lessons about trust and vulnerability. Through all of this, one truth emerges crystal clear. Certain aspects of your life are better kept private, not because you're hiding something shameful, but because privacy protects your peace, preserves your dignity, and shields you from unnecessary complications. For those of us in our later years, the importance of discretion becomes not just preferable but essential. There are specific aspects of life that, when kept confidential, don't just protect your reputation. They safeguard your mental well-being, maintain your autonomy, and allow you to continue living with grace and self-respect. Throughout this reflection, we'll explore in comprehensive detail the 9 secrets you should guard carefully. These insights aren't about deception or dishonesty. They're about wisdom, boundaries, and understanding that not everyone deserves access to every aspect of your life. By the time we finish, you'll understand exactly why protecting these 9 areas creates a foundation for continued dignity, independence, and peace of mind as you navigate your later years. Let's begin with the first secret, one that seems innocuous but carries surprising weight in how others perceive and treat you. Secret number 1. Your exact age, more than just a number. One of the first questions people ask when meeting someone new is, "How old are you?" It seems harmless, even polite in some contexts. Society treats age as basic biographical information, as routine as asking where you're from or what you do for work. But here's what most people don't realize. Revealing your exact age opens the door to assumptions, judgments, and limitations that you never agreed to accept. In contemporary culture, particularly in societies that worship youth and productivity, age becomes a label that defines how others see you. Once someone knows you're 65, 70, or 75, their entire perception shifts, often unconsciously. They begin making assumptions about your capabilities, your health status, your technological competence, your relevance, and even your remaining lifespan. This phenomenon has a name: ageism. Despite laws prohibiting age discrimination, it persists in subtle, insidious ways. People start speaking to you more slowly, as though age has diminished your comprehension. They offer unsolicited advice about health, finances, or technology, assuming you need guidance. They make decisions on your behalf, believing they're being helpful when they're actually being condescending. The most painful assumption of all: once people know your age, some begin treating you as though you're approaching life's finale, as though your best years are definitively behind you. They stop asking about your plans, your dreams, or your ambitions. Conversations shift from "what are you working on" to "how are you feeling?" Your identity becomes reduced to a number and all the stereotypes attached to it. But here's the liberating truth. Age is far less relevant than vitality, curiosity, and engagement with life. Longevity is unpredictable. I've known 55-year-olds who seem ancient in spirit, and 80-year-olds who radiate more energy and purpose than people half their age. Life isn't measured by the years you've accumulated, but by the experiences you continue to embrace, the relationships you nurture, and the meaning you create. By keeping your exact age private, you reclaim the power to define yourself on your own terms. You force others to judge you by your actions, your ideas, your character, not by a number that triggers their unconscious biases. You remain a person first, not a demographic category. When people don't know if you're 58 or 68, they interact with you based on who you actually are, not who they assume you must be. Remember this fundamental principle: your life is measured by the moments you fully inhabit, not the years you count. Keep your age to yourself and watch how it changes the quality of your interactions. Secret number 2. Your financial situation. Silence is golden. Money remains one of the most emotionally charged topics in human relationships. By the time you reach your 50s, 60s, and 70s, your financial situation has likely stabilized into a particular pattern. Perhaps you've accumulated significant wealth through decades of careful planning and investment. Perhaps you're living comfortably but modestly, or perhaps you're still working to achieve the financial security you hoped for by this stage of life. Regardless of where you fall on this spectrum, one rule applies universally: keep your financial affairs strictly private. The reasons for this transcend simple discretion. They touch on fundamental dynamics of human psychology, relationship preservation, and personal security. Consider what happens when you reveal financial abundance. Suddenly, relationships that felt balanced become complicated. Friends and family members begin seeing you differently. Some feel resentment or jealousy, wondering why fortune smiled on you and not them. Others begin expecting financial support, believing you have an obligation to share your prosperity. Invitations to social events come with unspoken expectations that you'll cover costs. Requests for loans, investments, or outright gifts become more frequent and more difficult to refuse without damaging relationships. Even well-meaning people begin treating you differently. They assume your resources should solve certain problems, that you should be more generous, that your wealth somehow diminishes your right to have boundaries around your money. The authenticity drains from relationships as people wonder about your motivations. Are they valued for themselves or for what they might receive? Now consider the opposite scenario: revealing financial struggle. This invitation to pity can be equally damaging. People begin making assumptions about your life choices, your work ethic, your planning abilities. Even when they mean well, their sympathy can feel humiliating. They offer unwanted advice. They treat you as though you need rescuing. In a culture that equates financial success with personal worth, being known as financially struggling can trigger a cascade of judgment that attacks your dignity. There's profound wisdom in the old saying, "Money talks, but wealth whispers." Those who truly understand prosperity know that discretion preserves freedom. When others don't know your financial status, they can't make assumptions, demands, or judgments based on it. You maintain autonomy over your resources and your choices. Your financial situation, whatever it may be, is your private business. It doesn't define your worth, your character, or your contributions to the world. Those qualities exist independently of your bank balance. By keeping financial matters confidential, you protect the authenticity of your relationships and preserve your dignity, regardless of your economic circumstances. Let your actions, your values, and your treatment of others speak for you. Let your financial status remain your own concern. This boundary isn't about secrecy. It's about maintaining the freedom to live on your own terms. Secret number 3, family conflicts, the sanctuary of privacy. Every family harbors its own unique ecosystem of relationships, dynamics, tensions, and unresolved issues. The bonds connecting parents with children, spouses with each other, siblings across decades, and extended family across generations create intricate webs of love, obligation, resentment, loyalty, and sometimes disappointment. As we age, family often becomes simultaneously more important and more complicated. Adult children may become caregivers, reversing the dependency relationship you spent decades establishing. Spouses navigate health challenges, personality changes, and the stress of aging together. Siblings may finally address decades-old grievances or allow old wounds to fester into permanent estrangement. Extended family dynamics shift as the older generation ages and eventually passes. Within this complexity, conflicts inevitably arise. disagreements about caregiving responsibilities, arguments about inheritance, tensions about lifestyle choices, misunderstandings that grow into lasting resentments, different values creating friction, old family patterns reasserting themselves despite everyone's best intentions. Here's what you must understand. These family conflicts, regardless of how significant or painful, belong within the family circle. Revealing family problems to outsiders serves no constructive purpose and creates multiple dangers. First, it violates trust. When you share family conflicts with friends, neighbors, or acquaintances, you're disclosing information about people who didn't consent to their struggles being discussed. You're potentially damaging their reputation based on your subjective interpretation of complex situations. This betrayal, once discovered, often creates deeper rifts than the original conflict. Second, it invites judgment from people who don't have complete information. Friends and acquaintances will form opinions about your family members based on your necessarily biased account. They'll see your relatives through the lens of conflict rather than understanding them as complete human beings with their own perspectives and pain. These judgments, once formed, are difficult to undo even when relationships within your family heal. Third, it prevents resolution. When you process family conflicts by complaining to outsiders rather than addressing issues directly with family members, you release emotional pressure that might otherwise motivate you toward productive conversation. You entrench your own perspective rather than remaining open to understanding others' viewpoints. The conflict becomes static rather than dynamic. Fourth, it exposes your family to gossip. In close-knit communities, information spreads. What you share in confidence often doesn't remain confidential. Soon, people who barely know your family are discussing your private matters, forming opinions, taking sides. This external pressure often makes internal family dynamics worse rather than better. The path of wisdom involves handling family conflicts within the family system. Seek professional help if needed. A family therapist or mediator who is bound by confidentiality and trained in facilitating difficult conversations. Process your feelings privately through journaling or individual therapy, but resist the temptation to air family grievances in social settings. By maintaining this boundary, you create space for relationships to evolve, heal, and deepen without external interference. You protect family members' dignity and your own. You demonstrate loyalty, even in difficulty. And you preserve the possibility of reconciliation, which often requires privacy to unfold naturally. Family privacy isn't about hiding dysfunction. It's about recognizing that the complicated relationships that shape us most profoundly deserve protection from outside judgment and gossip. Secret number 4. Your medications and treatments. Health is personal. As we move through our 50s, 60s, and 70s, health naturally becomes a more prominent focus. Many people at this life stage manage chronic conditions, take multiple daily medications, undergo various treatments, and navigate the complex healthcare system regularly. Health concerns become common conversation topics among age peers who bond over shared challenges. However, there's a crucial distinction between general health discussions and detailed disclosure of your specific medications, treatments, and medical conditions. The difference matters more than most people realize. When you reveal comprehensive details about your health regimen, several problematic dynamics emerge. First, you invite an avalanche of unsolicited advice. Friends and acquaintances suddenly become amateur medical experts, suggesting alternative treatments, miracle supplements, dietary changes, or questioning your doctor's recommendations. While usually well-intentioned, this advice often lacks scientific basis and creates confusion or doubt about legitimate medical treatment. Second, you risk being defined by your conditions rather than seen as a complete person. Once people know you have diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, or any other chronic condition, they often begin viewing you through that lens. You become the diabetic or the one with the heart problem, rather than remaining the multifaceted individual you've always been. Your identity becomes medicalized in others' perceptions. Third, you expose yourself to pity, which can be more damaging to dignity than you might anticipate. People begin treating you as fragile, speaking more carefully around you, excluding you from activities they assume you can't handle, or constantly asking about your health in ways that reinforce your patient identity rather than your person identity. Fourth, detailed health disclosure can actually impact your opportunities. Despite legal protections, age and health discrimination persist in subtle forms. Information about your health status can influence whether you're invited to participate in activities, whether people trust you with responsibilities, or how they perceive your capabilities and longevity. The wise approach involves maintaining appropriate boundaries around health information. Share general information with close family who may need to assist in emergencies or coordinate care. Discuss specific conditions with your healthcare providers who are bound by confidentiality and trained to help. But resist the urge to provide detailed medical updates to casual acquaintances or even close friends, unless there's a specific reason they need this information. Your medications and treatments are tools you use to maintain quality of life, nothing more. They don't define who you are. By keeping these details private, you maintain control over your narrative. You remain a person who happens to be managing health challenges rather than becoming synonymous with those challenges. This privacy protects your dignity, reduces unwanted advice and pity, and allows you to continue engaging with life fully rather than being reduced to a collection of medical conditions in others' eyes. Secret number 5. Your intimate life sanctity requires privacy. Sexuality, desire, and intimate relationships don't disappear with age, despite societal narratives that often render older adults asexual in public discourse. For many people, intimacy becomes more meaningful, more comfortable, and more satisfying as they age, freed from earlier insecurities and enriched by decades of experience and deepening emotional connection. However, discussing the details of your intimate life carries significant risks, particularly as you age. Society's discomfort with older adult sexuality creates an environment where disclosure often triggers inappropriate responses, ranging from prurient curiosity to harsh judgment to dismissive mockery. Why should intimate matters remain strictly private? First, because intimacy derives its power partly from exclusivity. What happens between you and your partner in private moments of vulnerability, pleasure, and connection is sacred, precisely because it's shared only between you. When you discuss these experiences with others, you diminish their specialness and potentially violate your partner's privacy and trust. Second, because people frequently misunderstand, judge, or make inappropriate assumptions about choices that are deeply personal. Your intimate life reflects your values, desires, and the unique dynamic you share with your partner. Others' opinions about these choices are irrelevant and often reveal more about their discomfort or limitations than about anything meaningful regarding your life. Third, because disclosure can fundamentally alter how others perceive you and your relationship. Once you've shared intimate details, people struggle to interact with you without those images and information coloring their perspective. This changed perception can introduce awkwardness into otherwise comfortable relationships. Fourth, because in a society that stigmatizes older adult sexuality, disclosure can trigger ageist attitudes. People may respond with disgust, mockery, or the insulting assumption that you should no longer have intimate needs or experiences. These responses attack your dignity and reduce complex aspects of your humanity to objects of discomfort or derision. The intimate dimension of life, Whether it involves a long-term partner, a new relationship, or chosen celibacy, deserves protection through discretion. These experiences are yours alone. They exist in a realm that needs no outside validation, commentary, or analysis. By maintaining privacy around intimacy, you preserve the sanctity of your relationships and protect yourself from judgment. You maintain appropriate boundaries that allow others to see you as a complete person without access to aspects of your life that don't concern them, and you honor your partner by keeping shared vulnerable moments genuinely private. Intimacy is about connection, trust, and mutual respect. These qualities thrive in privacy and often suffer when exposed to outside scrutiny. Secret number 6, your charitable giving. The dignity of silent generosity. Charitable giving represents one of life's most meaningful acts. Whether through financial donations, volunteer time, or personal support to individuals in need, generosity creates positive impact and deep personal fulfillment. Many people in their later years, having achieved some measure of security and perspective on what truly matters, find great meaning in supporting causes and people they care about. However, there's a profound difference between giving for the inherent satisfaction of helping others and giving for recognition, praise, or social status. The distinction isn't always obvious, even to ourselves, but it matters tremendously. Why should charitable acts remain private? First, because public disclosure of generosity often appears self-serving, as though you're seeking praise or validation rather than genuinely focusing on the recipient's needs. Even when your motives are pure, announcing your donations or support can create the perception that you're more interested in recognition than impact. Second, because revealing your giving can create uncomfortable social pressure. When you publicize donations, others may feel obligated to give similarly, even if they're not in a financial position to do so. This pressure transforms generosity from a personal choice into a competitive display, which corrupts the entire purpose. Third, because silent giving preserves the dignity of recipients. Not everyone wants to be publicly identified as needing or receiving help. When you announce your support for specific individuals, you potentially expose their struggles or needs without their full consent. This violation of privacy, however well-intentioned, can cause embarrassment or damage to their sense of autonomy. Fourth, because private giving allows the focus to remain on impact rather than recognition. When you give quietly, you're free to consider what actually helps rather than what looks impressive. You can support causes that matter personally to you without worrying about whether others will understand or approve of your choices. There's profound wisdom in the principle that the best charity is the one that goes unnoticed. When you give without announcing it, the act becomes purely about the recipient's benefit rather than your recognition. You avoid the complicated dynamics that arise when generosity becomes performative. This doesn't mean you should never acknowledge supporting causes you care about in appropriate contexts. But there's a significant difference between mentioning general support for an organization versus publicizing specific donation amounts or making your giving a central part of your public identity. Silent generosity carries a quiet dignity that announced charity can never achieve. It reflects genuine compassion rather than social positioning. By keeping your charitable acts private, you honor the true spirit of giving while protecting both your own motives and recipients' dignity. Secret number 7, your accomplishments. Honor lives in humility. By the time you reach your 50s, 60s, and 70s, you've likely accumulated significant life accomplishments. Perhaps you built a successful career, raised children who became good people, contributed meaningfully to your community, overcame substantial challenges, or achieved goals that required years of dedicated effort. These accomplishments deserve recognition and provide legitimate sources of pride. However, there's a delicate balance between acknowledging your achievements and constantly broadcasting them. Repeatedly discussing your successes, seeking validation for past accomplishments, or comparing your achievements to others creates problematic dynamics that ultimately diminish the very honor you're trying to establish. Why should you maintain some privacy around your accomplishments? First, because constant self-promotion appears insecure rather than confident. People who are genuinely comfortable with their achievements don't need to repeatedly remind others of them. True confidence is quiet. It shows in how you carry yourself, not in what you verbally claim. Second, because highlighting your accomplishments can make others feel inadequate or defensive. When you repeatedly reference your successes, people inevitably compare their own achievements and may feel diminished by the comparison. This dynamic creates distance in relationships rather than connection. Third, because past accomplishments, while valuable, don't define your current worth. You're not merely a collection of things you've done. You're a person continuing to grow, learn, and contribute. When you repeatedly reference past achievements, you inadvertently suggest that your best years are behind you, that you're now living on former glory rather than continuing to create meaning. Fourth, because honor is something earned through consistent character and actions, not something claimed through self-promotion. True honor is bestowed by others who observe your integrity, kindness, competence, and contributions over time. It cannot be demanded or manufactured through announcement. The path of wisdom involves letting your actions speak for themselves. Share accomplishments when contextually appropriate, when asked directly, or when your experience might genuinely benefit others. But resist the temptation to make past achievements a regular conversation topic or to use them to establish superiority or demand respect. Humility doesn't mean denying your accomplishments or pretending you haven't achieved anything meaningful. It means understanding that your achievements are part of your story, but don't constitute your entire identity or worth. It means being comfortable enough with your journey that you don't need constant external validation. By maintaining appropriate privacy around your accomplishments, you allow others to discover your qualities gradually through interaction rather than through self-promotion. You demonstrate the quiet confidence that comes from genuine self-knowledge. And you preserve the dignity that humility provides, the dignity of knowing your worth without needing to constantly announce it. Secret number 8. Past hurts and insults. Freedom through release. Throughout decades of living, everyone accumulates wounds. Thoughtless words that cut deeply, deliberate insults or humiliations, betrayals by people you trusted, moments of rejection or dismissal that left lasting scars, professional setbacks that damaged confidence, social embarrassments that still trigger shame years later. These painful experiences are part of being human. They're inevitable in any life fully lived. However, what you do with these wounds determines whether they continue damaging you or whether you eventually transcend them. One of the most self-destructive patterns involves repeatedly discussing past hurts with others, reliving insults, cataloging grievances, and maintaining detailed mental records of who wronged you and how. While this pattern feels justified, it actually perpetuates your suffering and prevents healing. Why should you keep past hurts private? First, because repeatedly discussing wounds keeps them fresh rather than allowing them to heal. Each retelling reactivates the emotional pain, reinforcing neural pathways associated with hurt and resentment. You're essentially choosing to experience the injury again and again, rather than allowing time and perspective to diminish its impact. Second, because dwelling on past insults often reveals more about your current state than about the original offense. When you can't release old hurts, it suggests you're stuck in a victim identity that prevents growth and forward movement. Others begin seeing you as someone defined by grievances rather than as someone actively creating a meaningful present. Third, because holding on to resentment primarily damages you, not the people who hurt you. Those individuals have likely moved on, possibly forgotten the incident entirely, while you continue carrying the burden. As the saying goes, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Fourth, because sharing past hurts invites others to form judgments based on incomplete information. You're presenting your subjective interpretation of events, possibly distorted by time and emotion. Listeners form opinions about people they've never met based on your one-sided account, which isn't fair to anyone involved. The path to freedom involves private processing of old wounds. Work with a therapist if needed, someone trained to help you process pain constructively. Journal about your feelings to externalize them without burdening others. Practice forgiveness, which doesn't mean condoning wrong actions, but rather releasing their power over your present. Keeping past hurts private doesn't mean pretending they didn't happen or suppressing legitimate feelings. It means choosing not to let old injuries define your current identity or dominate your social interactions. It means recognizing that healing happens more effectively in appropriate private contexts than through repeated public rehearsal of grievances. As you age, one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the freedom that comes from releasing the past. Let old insults fade rather than keeping them vivid through constant discussion. Choose to be someone defined by your present character and future possibilities rather than by past wounds. This release requires courage and often professional support, but the lightness that comes from letting go of decades-old resentments is worth every bit of effort required. Secret number 9, your personal beliefs and spiritual practices, sacred ground. A mantra, in the broadest sense, represents any personal belief system, spiritual practice, philosophical principle, or guiding wisdom that provides meaning, direction, and comfort as you navigate life's challenges. For some, this involves traditional religious faith and prayer. For others, it might be daily affirmations, meditation practices, personal mottos, or secular philosophies that offer structure and purpose. By the time you reach your later years, you've likely developed some form of personal belief system that helps you make sense of existence, face mortality, and find meaning in daily life. These beliefs become increasingly precious as you age, providing comfort, strength, and perspective that external circumstances can't shake. However, your personal beliefs and spiritual practices deserve protection through privacy. Here's why. First, because not everyone will understand or respect your beliefs. Spiritual and philosophical matters are deeply personal, often touching on our most fundamental questions about existence, meaning, and purpose. When you share these beliefs with people who don't share your worldview, you risk mockery, dismissal, or condescending tolerance that can actually shake your faith rather than strengthen it. Second, because explaining or defending your beliefs to skeptics often weakens their power rather than validating them. Some truths are experienced rather than proven. Some sources of strength derive their power from being held privately rather than subjected to external scrutiny and debate. When you repeatedly explain or justify your beliefs, you unconsciously begin doubting them. Third, because your spiritual practices and mantras are sources of personal power that function best when kept private. There's a reason many spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of private prayer, meditation, or reflection. These practices create internal transformation that doesn't require external validation and may actually be compromised by it. Fourth, because sharing your deepest beliefs creates vulnerability that not everyone deserves access to. Your spiritual life represents your most intimate relationship with meaning itself. Exposing this to casual conversation or skeptical inquiry can feel like a violation, even when no harm was intended. The wise approach involves maintaining appropriate boundaries around your personal beliefs. Share with others who hold similar worldviews and will understand. Discuss with spiritual guides, mentors, or counselors in appropriate contexts. But resist the urge to broadcast your mantras, explain your faith, or defend your spiritual practices to people who haven't demonstrated genuine understanding or respect. Your beliefs are yours. They provide you with comfort, strength, and meaning. Their value doesn't depend on others' approval or understanding. By keeping them private, you protect their power and preserve the sanctity of your relationship with whatever gives your life ultimate meaning. In a world that often demands that people explain and justify their deepest convictions, choosing to keep your spiritual life private is an act of wisdom and self-protection. It allows you to draw strength from your beliefs without subjecting them to external pressures that might erode their significance. Bringing it all together, the wisdom of selective disclosure. Life is an ongoing negotiation between connection and privacy, between sharing ourselves with others and maintaining boundaries that protect our well-being. As we age, particularly between 50 and 75, this balance becomes increasingly important. We've lived long enough to understand that not everyone deserves access to every aspect of our lives, and that privacy isn't about secrecy or shame, it's about wisdom, dignity, and self-preservation. These 9 secrets: your exact age, your financial situation, family conflicts, medical treatments, intimate life, charitable giving, past accomplishments, old wounds, and personal beliefs represent the most vulnerable and valuable aspects of your existence. By protecting them through appropriate privacy, you maintain autonomy over your own narrative. You prevent others from making assumptions, judgments, or demands based on information that doesn't truly concern them. This selective disclosure isn't about being closed off or distrustful. It's about recognizing that wisdom often lives in silence, that what you choose not to reveal can be just as powerful as what you share. It's about understanding that your worth doesn't depend on others' validation, that your life's meaning doesn't require constant external confirmation, and that your dignity is best preserved when you maintain appropriate boundaries. As you continue your journey through these years, remember that you've earned the right to privacy. You've lived long enough to understand that not every question deserves an answer, not every conversation requires your full disclosure, and not everyone's opinion matters equally. Your life is yours to define, and protecting these 9 secrets allows you to live authentically while maintaining the peace, dignity, and autonomy you've worked a lifetime to achieve. The wisdom of age includes knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, knowing what to share and what to hold close, knowing who deserves your vulnerability and who doesn't. By guarding these 9 aspects of your life, you empower yourself to live fully, engage genuinely, and maintain the grace and self-respect that should characterize these valuable years. Thank you for investing your time in this reflection. If you found these insights meaningful and valuable, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspectives and experiences contribute to a broader conversation about aging with wisdom and dignity. And remember, the most profound truths about living well are often the ones we keep closest to our hearts.